I was sat there, watching the credits of Persona 5 Royal rolling down the screen. Credits I'd become very accustomed to through the various playthroughs of the game I'd done in the past few years. But this time, a different thought crossed my mind. How do I make a video about this game? There are an unhealthy amount of essay-type videos about Persona 5 on YouTube, and I knew my format wasn't nearly enough to make a unique video about this game, so I decided to do something different. I love Persona 5, but I don't think anyone can argue against the sentiment that it's a flawed game. So my goal for this video is to highlight some of those flaws and talk about where the series could head in the future. I know Atlas has just gone through a long period of reforming the company and hiring new staff in order for a fresh new direction with the next Persona game. So what do I personally want to see from Persona 6, and how exactly is Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal flawed?
What's up, guys? Good evening and shit. It's like 10:40.
First, I want to discuss the aspect of Persona that I think was best optimized with the release of Persona 5. I think Persona 5 really took the best aspects from all of the prior games and repackaged it along with brand new, fresh ideas to streamline the gameplay and make what many people feel is the best and most enjoyable version of Persona's core game mechanics. And I want to clarify before anything, this includes the confidants and social links, but I'll talk about them later. First of all, Persona 5 reintroduced actual level design in the series. Whether or not it's good level design is up to your own interpretation, but it's most definitely a step up from what was seen in previous games. The dungeon crawling aspect of the game is much more refined and at points can even be enjoyable. I think Persona 4 added a little amount of personality and individuality in its dungeon crawling. Persona 5, however, blows it out the fucking ocean with its palaces. I mean, just look at this. Mementos is much more faithful with the dungeon crawling aspects of the previous games, especially Tartarus, but the grind has been made much easier. But like I said, I'm not here to suck Atlas's dick, so let's get right into the nitty-gritty. The most common point of critique I see with Persona 5 is its difficulty. Now let me get this straight. Persona games aren't necessarily the hardest games, especially compared to other Mega 10 games, but Persona 5 is exceptionally easy. I think it's no secret that when making Persona 5, Atlas put a lot more attention and focus on creating a game that would expand the Persona brand worldwide, rather than creating a game that fans of Persona would love. Not to say that fans of other Persona games wouldn't come to love this one too, it's just that Persona 5 is much more newcomer oriented than the games that came before it, and it most definitely has to do with the success of Persona 4. Personally, I don't think this is a problem. I just find it confusing when the hard modes of this game still feel really hand-holdy. If you spend a decent amount of time in the Velvet Room fusing personas and roughly have a grasp on what you're doing, you will breeze past this game. Not to mention the added benefits of Confidant abilities that quickly get more and more broken as you progress, and how easy it is to level up. And hot take, this isn't actually the issue here. Like I said just before, the problem is that the hardest difficulties still aren't hard. I love the concept of social links providing unique benefits to you throughout the game. It adds a layer of strategy, meticulously working through specific confidants to reap the benefits that you feel will support you the most at the point of the game that you're at. For example, going through Kawakami's confidant to unlock the ability to do things at night after going into the metaverse, or talking to Hifumi to unlock the ability to rotate party members at the expense of your turn. One of my favorite aspects of this is that the gameplay by itself, without any of the social link abilities, still feels really fleshed out. I hate it when games lock things away that really should have been there from the start, but Persona 5 influenced the confidant abilities in a very seamless way, for the most part. But I definitely feel a lot of these confidant abilities would benefit greatly from better and more well-planned balancing. For the first palace, you're like, oh, this game is crazy. I'm getting one shot by a fucking horse. This boss is going to fuck me up. And then after that, you get overleveled as fuck and the bosses can't even hit you anymore. This time in my playthrough for this video, I decided to try out Merciless to give myself a challenge and hopefully enjoy the gameplay a lot more than I did the first few times I played, where I remember dreading going into Mementos and doing the palaces. I see Merciless get criticized a lot, but I found it to be way more enjoyable than all the criticism led me to believe, and made planning for fights fun for the most part. However, I had to make sure to avoid unnecessary fights so that I wouldn't get overleveled. Most of the game, I was about 10 levels below what I really should have been, which meant that I had to plan out things a lot more and not be so careless when I got into fights, which was good. What's not good is that I had to go out of my way to make sure I was underleveled. Even then, the final bosses were an absolute breeze because of the personas I had. In my opinion, the core gameplay of Persona 5 is amazing. Baton passing is incredibly fun and satisfying, technical hits allow for a much more diverse approach to battling shadows, and the new shadow negotiation and party gun mechanics are well made and have their uses, but I'd like to see the gameplay of future Persona games take the system into account and plan out their games accordingly. In harder difficulties, have skill checks forcing players to spend their time with confidants and gain new abilities. Of course, have better balancing for confidants, have things that really should be unlocked late game actually be unlocked late game instead of rank 5. The learning curve for Persona 5 is kinda like this, and it really should be more balanced. Remove the weather elements for the Reaper, the fact that you can just grind on a self-destructing Reaper is dumb, reduce money from shadows, and increase money from part-time jobs to make them more useful. There are tons of other things you can do to make the dungeon crawling aspects harder, rather than just making it so you get less experience and having players be underleveled. Make it so that when you get spotted, you can't just slap the shadow and not have any repercussions. If you're getting spotted, that's your fault. You should receive ample consequences. Obviously, you can run away, but make it so you can't cheese your way out of being ambushed. And of course, keeping easy and safe modes as a means to enjoy the story without wasting away grinding. There's obviously a lot more that can be changed, but I feel like I'm spending too long talking about something that's already been discussed to death, so let's move on. One of my biggest quote-unquote gripes with this game is something I didn't even realize on my first playthrough, or my second playthrough, but something I realized after playing Persona 4. In my opinion, Persona 5's characters don't feel as captivating or fleshed out compared to the characters in Persona 4. The social link stories don't have the highs that Persona 4 does, and some of the characters are kind of fucking annoying. I think the characters are what make Persona 4 so special, so it's not like I'm expecting Persona 5 to reach those same highs, it's just that I don't feel very attached to many of the characters in this game. And this isn't just the side characters. Even the main casts don't feel as fleshed out as they could be. Haru is a great example of this, but it's not just that they aren't fleshed out. A lot of time, Persona 5 struggles with the characters being pretty one note. There are some nuances to the characters, but sometimes it feels like these characters are just there to tick off points. Futaba's a shut-in nerd who's shy and doesn't go out much. Makoto is a model student who's smart but doesn't really know how to make friends. And Morgana's a dick. You know what? Let's talk about Morgana. I just mentioned Futaba and Makoto, but their characters do have growth and tackle some interesting topics. I mean, Futaba has to cope with the fact that she was lied to about the death of her mother for so long and finally start to get out of her comfort zone after being stuck there for ages. Makoto is constantly compared to her sister, not just by others, but herself too. She has no parents and no friends until the Phantom Thieves come, and the other girl, I guess. My point is that these characters do have interesting traits and stories to be told. It's just that the execution at times is pretty subpar, and during the main story, it feels like each character is reduced to just 1 to 2 personality points. However, Morgana has a shit story, is a dick throughout the game, and is still an annoying piece of shit at the end of the game. He's so bad that the thing I remember the most about Akumura's storyline is Morgana getting booted into a wall. One of my favorite parts from Kanashiro's palace is Morgana dying, and this was my reaction to Morgana coming back from the dead. Not just once, but twice.
If only Mona could be here with us.
Like, shut the fuck up. Don't even...
Just like with my mom.
And Morgana walks through the door.
Did someone say my name?
Did someone say my fucking name? One of my favorite topics regarding Persona 5 is the relationship between Morgana and Ryuji. Morgana is this condescending asshole who constantly spits out useless information, makes Ryuji and solely Ryuji feel like shit over and over again for usually no reason, puts the group into danger multiple times, is constantly a creep, is literally the only character who joins the Phantom Thieves to benefit himself, and on top of all of this, he faces no consequences and has little to no growth. He embodies the core issues of Persona 5's execution and is constantly in the limelight. All of this makes his core relationship with Ryuji, who in my opinion embodies what a Persona character should be, all the more ironic. Ryuji is an excellently executed character. Persona is a series that prides itself with sticking to common tropes and utilizing them to create a unique and special experience. Ryuji is a vulgar airhead who is shown throughout the game to be trying his best to be a great person. He's often shown joking around with the Phantom Thieves, but knows when to be serious and listen. He's not scared of speaking the truth. Ryuji's actually incredibly kind throughout the story, and especially in a social link. He's one of the characters with the strongest resolve against the shitty adults. Ryuji is a subject of abuse from Kamoshida, who essentially ruined his future in track. Through all of this, I think Ryuji has a lot of nuanced traits that you learn to appreciate the more time you spend with him. Although sometimes he's a dumbass and a weirdo, Ryuji is a special character. But of course, Morgana finds a way to ruin everything.
Sheesh, some team you are. What's with all the hesitation? I can't stand this. Even you, Ryuji. You just back down the second someone disagrees with you. I guess all you've been talking about is using the Phantom Thieves' name to pick up girls anyway. I'm more admirable than some carnal blonde monkey. Sorry, but it looks like I'll be getting the credit for solving the mental shutdown mystery.
Well, she was more useful than you, as a matter of fact.
Hey, that's inexcusable! I'm going to show you who the useless one actually is.
Morgana had no reason to single out Ryuji, who, mind you, was one of the only people who were technically on his side in this debate, brought up a moment where Ryuji stated facts calling Futaba a better guide than Morgana, which although can be seen as uncalled for, Morgana would constantly berate Ryuji for his insecurities before this and would continue to do so after this. And just when Morgana gets a slight taste of the same treatment, he breaks down and almost ruins the whole group, almost getting him and someone who wasn't even involved killed. And then the game tries to villainize Ryuji? I don't even want to dive into how hypocritical Morgana is, especially during this scene, and how completely unjustified his actions are in every way. I feel like the scene kind of speaks for itself with the given context. Akumura's palace might be the worst written one in Persona 5, but the issues present here are just one example of how Persona 5's writing can be pretty flawed. Persona 5 struggles with its pacing, always spoon-feeding information to the player, leaving the game with little to no subtlety, maybe excluding Persona 5 Royal's final palace to some extent, underdeveloped characters and plot points, and a myriad of design flaws that could have easily been avoided. But in the end, Persona 5 is an incredible game. It's so insanely polished, beautiful and charming, it's got a unique identity that's instantly recognizable, the game is so well optimized, it hooks you in incredibly, and although I talked a lot about poor execution with characters and plot points, it delivers its message well and has moments of absolute perfection and greatness. It's a great game, and I don't think there's any denying that. 9 out of 10.
You and I